Hello and welcome to Azur Lane Meta. If after this video you want to help support the channel, please check out my affiliate store at kit.co/AzurLaneMeta. Russian invasion time. Okay, maybe I could have picked a better choice of words there. Who wants to race me to getting Kiev? Okay, I'll stop now. Let's get into the data mine. You guys know what day it is. It is time to look at all of the new stats, including the new Russian event that drops today. I'm super excited. Of course, we're going to talk about the event in the patch notes before we get into the specific stats and skills of the new ships. As always, this is a data mine, so things are subject to change when they come out. Check the pinned comment if you want to see if there's any changes from the video. I typically have a pinned comment and I will edit that if more changes come or corrections occur. So patch notes wise, we are pretty simple today. Not a huge amount of changes. We're getting all new skins for the new ships, of course, including the new Kronk L2D, but this is the best skin. Changed my mind. Of course, lately we've gotten a bunch of new cube gifts, so thank you, YoStar, since this was obviously a very short turnaround on DR events, the shortest ever. So for those of you who are a little bit short on cubes, we definitely got a lot in mails, so hopefully I wish you guys the best of luck in your polls. Let me know in the comments how those go. Manju also brought us 3 quality of life changes, which are really nice, things that I've wanted in the past and talked about really just as recently as like last week, so this is exciting. First, SP modes are going to have auto clear features now. This is something that I've been waiting for a while because you got to clear these all the time. Obviously, before you could do D3 on repeat, but now you can actually do that for SP mode, which is great because that's going to be the most event points for your oil consumption and your time. So that's fantastic. I'm glad that got autoed. Also, for the future light rerun events, we're going to be having map progress carry over for the next event. So that means if you finish through D3, then you'll be able to have that progress carry over when the rerun comes. This is something that we talked about a lot in the comments of the last video, which is actually a very heavy comment section, one of the highest engagement rates I've had on a video in a while. Thank you guys for bringing all of your thoughts to that video, but I do think this is a welcome change. Obviously it's not going to matter for this event, but they're going to start recording stuff so that when they rerun this event in the future, it will apply. And finally, for Operation Siren, classified file mission loggers have now been added to the exchange shop, at least one version of them. They are a one-time purchase. So with that pretty much out of the way, let's get into the event. I'm going to actually start off talking about map drops and kind of how to go about the event, and then we'll get into the ships specifically after that. This new event comes with a chat frame, so getting all of the new ships and max limit breaking them will get you access to this new chat frame. Interestingly enough, the Lomonosov Moscow State University building is actually on this frame, so I thought that was kind of neat. If we look at the event shop, we get Kiev and the new triple 305 gun. We'll talk about equipment after we go through the ships, but these are going to be unique. This gun does not drop from the map. Here are the map drops with their most relevant item that they drop. Nothing here is very special, so there's no real map that you're going to be grinding for any gear. The only thing I would say is new players who don't have enough of those steering gears will want to get those D3 steering gears. Those are decent. It's always good to have a set of at least 6 on hand of those. And that's perfect because D3, of course, is going to give you the most event points. So if you're going to farm a ton, that is the place to do it. But there are no gear drops, so you don't have to go crazy. You don't need 100,000 event points this event. 50,000 will be plenty. Soobrazitelny. Oh my gosh, those are going to be brutal. Is going to be accumulation reward at 10,000 points. So obviously you do need to get to that if you want to collect all the ships. But 10,000 points is pretty easy to get to. All right. Before we get into the ships, here is what their fleet tech looks like. So if you don't care at all about any of these Russian ships and you don't like them, fleet tech still matters. It does get added to it. I know fleet tech mechanics have changed recently, so now you can actually take fleet tech away from your ships if you want, optionally. This is good for like time syncing if you have a bunch of reload fleet tech. So basically getting more fleet tech has no downside now because you can remove it if there's a situation that calls for that, which is basically only if they're getting too much MVP or if reload is affecting your timers negatively. All right, it's that time to get into the ships. You guys have been waiting long enough, and I'm so interested in getting into this new UR. So we're going to get straight into it and screw my watch time. She has a build timer of 4 hours and 43 minutes, so that is your magic number you are looking for. She, of course, is going to be part of the pity, so 400 cubes will guarantee that you get her. So let's look at this new large cruiser. All right, stat-wise, she is medium armor, so she's going to be more like Azuma than Agir, who's heavy armor. And if we look at her health, she's actually much lower than Agir's raw health. Firepower is lower too. She has no torpedoes. Really, yeah, Kronstadt is very much more similar to Azuma than she is to Agir, which is actually not a good thing in terms of her stats because Azuma is worse than Agir in that level. All around, she is a very powerful ship, but in terms of large cruisers, which she's going to be fighting with 2 other Rainbow Rarity ships, she's nothing special. She's worse than Agir stat-wise. Now, that can change when we go and take a look at the skills. She also doesn't have torps. She's got main gun mount +2 there with the CA gun or a CB gun. You can run either the large cruiser gun or the heavy cruiser gun. And then a light cruiser gun in the auxiliary slot, not a DD gun. So that's interesting. So far, though, the stats aren't like super impressive for a UR, but I imagine the skills are going to be good. I'm hoping for a cross-fleet barrage / buff because every UR so far that's come from Gacha has one. We'll see if that trend continues. Skill number 1. Firepower and evasion is increased by +8%. That helps because her evasion's a little bit lower than like something like Agir, and firepower too. So this is basically just getting them back to normal, but that's great. Fire barrage every 8 main gun shots. If the main gun is equipped with a large cruiser gun, a barrage has an enhancement and its requirement is reduced to every 4 shots. Obviously, CB guns are much slower than CA guns, so that makes sense. You're going to want to probably put a CB gun on her based on this. Additionally, we didn't talk about this in the stats part, but she has a ghost gun too, and this ghost gun is actually really lit. It's kind of like almost like a Gears ghost gun in that it's significantly better than other ghost guns, like the base ones. Every ship basically kind of has a ghost gun. Not every ship, every like heavy cruiser has one. So that needs to be taken into consideration. She basically has like extra damage out of that ghost gun, and then she has this barrage and the main gun mount +2 on the main gun, and also the auxiliary gun too. She's got a lot of firepower, so even though her firepower stat is a little bit lower, she's got a lot of damage that comes out of that. But let's look at the second skill here. AP damage taken is reduced by 8%. A little bit sad that only applies to AP damage. Of course, she is medium armor, so AP damage is going to be pretty much going to hurt her the most. She can equip VH armor, so that's interesting. You could actually get the damage reduction kind of in that way by increasing her to heavy armor by putting a VH armor equipment on her. But, you know, 8% damage reduction, can't complain too much that. Fire a barrage every 4 secondary gun shots. So that means for our light cruiser gun, we're going to want something that has a shorter cooldown so that we can get this to proc more often. So that's interesting. We're looking at almost a barrage auxiliary gun for this skill. Enemies hit by this barrage that happens every 4 auxiliary gun shots have their firepower reduced by 5%. I'm not sure if that stacks. I don't think that it stacks. I think it sticks permanently for the battle. So it's just like it hits, they get the 5%, they're like marked, but I don't think it stacks. That's how I read this right now, is that it hits them, it marks them, and they're -5% for the rest of the battle, and you can't get more. I think that's how I read that. That's still very good, like, especially against bosses, right? If it stacks, that'd be crazy against, like, really big bosses. You just be like, all right, they're not going to do any damage. So I'm pretty confident this doesn't stack, but even 5% is pretty decent. Additionally, when equipped with Northern Parliament equipment, her secondary gun slot efficiency goes up by 45%, so that increases it from 55% to 100% efficiency. That's a big increase. That is like basically just raw damage output from that CL gun. And AP damage reduction now applies to all damage. Oh, well, that fixed that. So there's no situation where you don't put a secondary gun auxiliary on her. If you have one, obviously, if you don't have one, you can't do it, but you're definitely going to be looking at those new guns you picked up in the last event, hopefully, you're going to want to put him on her, definitely. 45% is a big deal in terms of efficiency, and that damage reduction applying to now aviation damage and torp damage and HE damage is very important. So yeah, this skill's good. This actually makes her pretty tanky. I think if we look at EHP now and we look at the stats with this damage reduction skill, I think her effective HP is going to be a little bit higher than Azuma, still going to be lower than Agir, and I haven't figured out whether I want to put VH armor on her yet, but pretty likely that we're going to see that in certain situations. All right, we have the final skill for her, and we haven't had a crossfleet yet, so I'm calling it right now that this is going to be it. When the HP falls under 10%, we get... Wait, she's going to be a zombie heal? What? Okay, I'll finish reading it. When HP falls under 10%, heal 1% for every second for 10 seconds. So it's a 10% heal whenever she falls to under 10% health. Interesting. After triggering, take 50% less burn damage for the rest of battle, and this triggers once per battle. Okay, this is interesting. 10%'s really low, actually, because like she starts at 7,500, and then we're gonna put maybe VH armor on her and some other buffs, and obviously this is at 100 love, so if you oath her, that's a little bit higher. So between 7,500 and 8,000 health. So 10%'s actually pretty low even for her. Like, I don't know, she's tanky, but like 10% is not a lot. You got to get really down there for her heal, and her heal is going to only heal 10%, which is once again going to be like 800 max health there, which is like kind of one shot. So this heal seems like it's a little bit too little too late, but it's definitely a zombie heal. I just don't see a situation where this UR ship is really struggling to survive in most PvE situations. It's definitely in PvP too little too late, and so it's kind of an interesting situation. Maybe when we get really hard content, maybe in World 14, maybe in the Abyssal zones, maybe in the new Operation Siren like center red thing where you fight those very strong bosses, this could be relevant, but those are once again just single bosses, and this kind of almost feels like a mobbing zombie. I don't know, this first part of this skill seems a little bit out of place. I'll take it. It's a heal, great. Certainly something that other large cruisers don't have, so that is unique to her. If you want a large cruiser that has a zombie heal, she's your only option. For the second half of this skill, Cross Fleet Barrage. Let's go, called it. 20 seconds after the start of the battle, enemies hit by this barrage are slowed by 40% for 5 seconds. Wow. If the fleet's flagship is a battleship, also buff that battleship in the fleet with -2 gun dispersion. Wow, this is a great cross fleet. First of all, we're going to talk about the enemy slow at the 20-second mark. This is guaranteed, basically. You get 20 seconds in, so this is like right in time for all of your carriers to launch. It's a little bit late for some of your battleships, but you can fix that with timing and all that sort of thing. And you get this barrage that slows enemies 40%. This is a great cross fleet. You're just going to put it in your secondary fleet, in your mob fleet, whatever it is. This slow is really good. This right away makes this like a must pick up because there's nothing like this, and being able to have a slow without having to be limited to the ships that are slows. Like right now, if you want to slow, you got to use like Paimon, you got to use Rune Mew or something like that. You got to use those ships which are effectively worse than the best in slots. So by having this in the other fleet, you can then use the best in slot whatever you want. If you want Torps, Shimikaze, or whatever it is, this is really good. And then it also buffs the flagship BB by basically reducing the spread, so more accuracy, so you're gonna have less of like just stray shots missing. So yeah, this cross fleet's really good, and it's very generic. There's no like has to be Northern Parliament sort of thing. It's just like throw this in. And I guess this is gonna segue into me thinking about overall what this ship is, and generally it's a little bit tankier than Azuma. It's got a bunch of like firepower. It's got, you know, the main gun +1, and then it's got the auxiliary gun, and then it's got the ghost gun. So in terms of tankiness, it's like below a gear but above Azuma. A gear obviously has the slow on the torpedo hit, and she doesn't even have torpedoes. She's probably a little bit less than in DPS than a gear, but probably a little bit higher than Azuma. That's kind of where I'm at preliminarily here, but I don't really care about anything else about this ship other than the fact it's got a cross fleet slowing barrage. Like, that is so good. I don't know how to explain that. Even if this ship is not better than a gear, which is actually a good thing though, because people who have invested like 9 months of their life into a gear to have it be power creeped in 1 week kind of would suck. And this is like a perfect, I would say perfect ideation of a new large cruiser, because she's definitely weaker than a gear, except the utility of this skill is so important. I say this is a must pick up for that skill. Like, if you are going to want a cross fleet slow at some point, you should probably pick this up, unless you're like really hurting for cubes. But like, we probably are going to have another 3 months before a new UR drops, and this is a must pick up for me personally. I'm going to pity for this if I need it, and it's solely for this skill. Everything else is pretty much, you know, I have a gear for that, that's fine, and even Azuma will do just fine, but this cross fleet buff is impressive. All right, now that I'm done like simping for Kronkbonk, let's go over to the next ship. We have Kiev, who is going to be droppable and also in the shop. She is a SR destroyer, and like most destroyers, has light armor. From the initial look at her stats, she's going to be a firepower destroyer. Her torpedo is not great. Anti-air is not great either, but really focusing on that firepower. She's also like not half bad tankiness, but nothing too special. Standard for the DD guns. Actually, the DD gun efficiency is pretty high, so that's good. This all tells me that she's going to be a firepower destroyer. All right, let's go into skill number 1. 5 seconds after the start of the battle, launch a barrage. Every 10 seconds afterward, increase her self-crit rate and crit damage by 10%. That's actually decent. Enhance the barrage and launch it. Stat buff and barrage enhancing can proc twice at most in a battle. So she can get the 5 seconds after the battle, and then 15 seconds after the battle, and then 25 seconds, she's going to get that crit boost, and then she's going to enhance the barrage. So in theory, because it buffs twice, we get a 10% boost to crit rate and crit damage at the 15-second mark, and our barrage the first time is not going to be as strong as the subsequent ones. So she's definitely one that like builds into the battle. She's going to be weak for like the first 15 seconds before she hits full power. This does add a lot of barrage damage though, so that's good. Skill number 2, she gets plus 10% accuracy. Wow, this ship is like very much built for accuracy in terms of first skill, second skill. We are going for critting, we are going for making sure we're hitting, and we're going to hit hard. Of course, it's a destroyer, so hard is in parentheses. At the start of the battle, if the Vanguard is full, so there's 3 ships, or there is another Northern Parliament character in the fleet, so if we have someone in the main fleet that's from the Russian faction, then we can use her by herself. She increases her firepower and torpedo by 15%. Actually, 15% of that firepower ain't half bad for a destroyer, mind you, with 165% efficiency, so that's not bad. If the Vanguard consists of only this ship, her anti-air and evasion go up by 15%. So honestly, this ship, it looks like it might be built definitely for 1-1 mobbing or something like that. The third skill she has is just an all-out attacks or an all-out assault. So that's just more barrage every 10 main gun fires. So honestly, this is a pretty lackluster ship for me. Nothing really stands out to me. She really focuses on making sure her bullets hit and don't miss, which is good, I guess, against like things that have high evasion. And she really looks like she's focused on like 1-1 fleeting, like by herself in the Vanguard, and then you use another Russian backliner. Maybe it's Volga or the new BB from this event. I don't know. I haven't looked at them yet if they're any good. Or it could be Belarusia or Roisia. I'm not sure. Probably not Roisia. She needs like her accuracy buffs. So it does look like a mobbing fleet, maybe to put with Belarusia or something, but nothing really stands out. And once again, it's a destroyer firepower. So we're getting all this like crit and accuracy for a 1-1 fleet, like for oil efficiency. And 1-1 fleets have significantly been less utilitarian once we've gotten these oil caps that came in more recently, because you don't need a 1-1 fleet as much. But this ship seems more collection only. I mean, I think she's the cutest ship in the bunch, but that's just my opinion. This is probably more waifu over meta, but she's not half bad. She's definitely usable in like clearing stuff. All right, moving on. Next, we have the SR carrier Volga. I'm very interested about what they gave the Russians for carriers, because Russian faction has no carriers prior to this, of course. And so depending on what they do with this carrier, it could change a lot. So a lot of times when I look at a SR carrier, I like to compare her right off the bat to like an Essex class, stat-wise at least. In terms of health, that's right on par, and she's medium armor. In evasion and everything. Aviation, she's actually a lot less. So in terms of like her raw damage output she can do, she's going to be less than your standard Essex classes. So that's not really going to be her strength in terms of damage. Now let's look at her loadout. Her loadout is going to be 3 fighters, 2 dive bombers, and 3 torpedo bombers. This is actually better than the traditional 3-3-2 that the Essex class carriers will have, because we have extra damage in torpedo bombers, who typically do more damage. You can have them converge, so you can have like less missed opportunity damage. Also, they have more crash damage in PvP, so generally like torpedo bombers better. The efficiencies are 140 in fighters, 120 in dive bombers, 130 in torpedo bombers. So in terms of that, that's all fine in terms of her loadout. And for an SR carrier, she's going to have her 8 planes, which is pretty standard. So overall, stat wise, I'd say she's a little bit weaker than your standard Essex class, but not that much. Like, she has a little bit less aviation, but, you know, I do like her equipment loadout just a tad bit better. All right, moving on to skill number 1. There's a 75% chance to trigger a aviation barrage when she launches an airstrike. So that is, you know, not perfect. I think Acula is right around this range. However, this barrage has torps that cause flooding for 12 seconds. Flooding is basically a carrier's version of burn damage, so that's good. We have some damage over time ticks. If this barrage fails, so this is the 25% chance that you don't have, fire an alternative barrage instead, so basically just a weaker version. So you're gonna get a barrage guaranteed. It's whether or not it's like stronger with this enhanced flooding damage over time. Okay, barrage, okay. Moving on to skill number 2. Every 20 seconds, heal the lowest HP percentage and 2 random ships in the fleet for 5% of Volga's max HP. Then summon an ice crystal armament that explodes after 2 seconds, and that explosion causes aviation-based damage. Okay, this I actually can be on board with. This is a heal. This is actually a really good heal. It procs guaranteed on every 20 seconds, so we don't have to care about cooldown times, which means we can't really time it, but we also, 20 seconds is not a terrible time. Also, it heals the lowest HP, so it's targeted. This is like Ryoho, and that's a good thing. We want to target our ships that are hurting, and it just auto does that as part of the skill. 2 random ships looks great, and 5% of Volga's max HP actually matters a lot because Volga's HP can actually be higher than a lot of your Vanguard is going to be taking damage. Volga's HP is just shy of 7,000, and if you have her like, you know, oathed, or if you have her with some equipment, you can get over 7,000. So that means you can heal like 350 potentially on a destroyer, which, you know, if destroyers are coming in at 2,000, 2,500 health, that actually makes a significant impact there. So I actually like this heal, and it's 20 seconds means we do have to wait. It's not like an instant heal like Perseus, so it's not going to replace Perseus by any means, but it is actually a good heal. Evan the chat for KMS fans whose faction doesn't have a healer before the Russian faction does. Anyway, I like this heal. The extra explosion damage is great. Okay, we got extra DPS, but generally this is a heal that is going to scale off the bigger ship's HP. Not necessarily if it's going to heal like Kronk. Kronk actually has a bigger HP pool, ironically, but this is actually kind of funny because we just got done talking about Kiev, and I feel like Volga pairs with Kiev really well because Kiev can actually keep her pretty healthy in this 1-1 fleet, and we have barrages that come in here. Yeah, I think Volga with like a 1-1 pair with Kiev could be good because Kiev actually has a lot of accuracy and firepower, so that can help against suicide boats and things like that. Yeah, I actually like this Volga Kiev 1-1 fleet the more that I think about it. All right, moving on to the third skill. +5 aviation for every ship in the Vanguard. Max stacks 3. If the flagship or the lead Vanguard ship is Northern Parliament, gain additional max stacks. Okay, well, that idea was kind of fried. So she gets aviation buffs by 5% for every ship in the Vanguard. So in theory, you should always be getting 15% unless you're being an idiot and doing the 1-1 fleet like I said earlier. That's actually really sad because I feel like there's a lot of synergy between these two ships. And then this skill basically just comes in and is like, nope, we want a full Vanguard. And Kiev doesn't want a full Vanguard. So, yep, I guess that synergy is gone. But 15% aviation is actually kind of important because at 400 aviation or so, that's an extra 60 aviation, which puts her kind of back into that competitive range aviation-wise. So that's important. And we can actually get higher than that. We can get up to 25% aviation, which that turns out to be like 100 aviation. So that puts her at like 500 there. Obviously, a lot of ships in that category have their own aviation buffs, but this is actually a good thing. We obviously want the flagship and the lead Vanguard to be Russian for this to happen to get the 5 stacks. If you make her the flagship, of course, she's Russian, so that will count. So that's an easy way to knock off that one. And then the other one, you're going to have a Russian Vanguard ship, but that's really easy. Russians, for some reason, have a really good set of Vanguard ships, not even including Kronk, who is very good, but they also have like Chapyev and Paimat and Tashkent. So there's a lot of Russian ships that are not bad at all. You're not going to be taking any hit here by having to play one Northern Parliament Vanguard ship. And you can just make her the flagship and she covers herself. So yeah, we can get up to 25% aviation buff on this one. That's basically, in short, what this is. A little bit of locking you into some fleet compositions. But overall, actually, Volga is pretty impressive. We have a half-decent ship in terms of barrages and damage. And then we have a heal that's, not negligible. I like Volga. Obviously, Perseus is really hard to uproot. Acula is really hard to uproot. But if you are a super big Russian fan, this is a great carrier to start off with. And, as a healer, you could see some utility for her specifically, even if you're not like a Russian stan. All right, we're moving off of the SRs and into the elites. Next up, we have the elite battleship Arkhangelsk. Oh my gosh, this event is brutal with names, man. I apologize to all of my Russian viewers. She's got heavy armor like a standard battleship. Her health is and firepower are like standard for elite battleships, which is not great. Like, it's fine. Her main gun mounts are typical. She's got 3 main gun mounts for her battleship gun, which is fine, but she's actually got 3 main gun mounts for her auxiliary slot and 200 efficiency. So I guess she's really good at killing suicide boats. At least that's what the stats are telling me right off the bat. Let's move on to the skills to see if there's anything else there. Skill number 1, fire a barrage every 15 seconds. Main fleet plus 10% accuracy for 8 seconds after the barrage triggers. So fire barrage at 15 seconds, that's okay. And then also the accuracy buff for 8 seconds is actually really nice for the whole main fleet. It's just not her, it's everybody. So in theory, if you have like other battleships that are going to be proccing at like the 18-second mark, that is going to be covered by this. In fact, it goes all the way to the 23-second mark of the battle, which should actually cover some of your carriers as well. And so honestly, this means that you basically get to buff the whole backline with accuracy or hit stats. So that's actually kind of nice. There is some utility there. I'm not sure if it's worth it running like a inferior base stat battleship, but in terms of like that skill, it's like you get a straight buff to hit against the whole backline. So that's good at least. Skill number 2, for every Russian or HMS ship. Oh, there you go, British ships. You're in at least one of the skills here. Oh, that makes sense because she's actually, she is a loaner. She was built by the British and then she got loaned to the Russians and then they didn't give her back. Okay, that actually, I like that. Awesome. We have some of her history built into this skill. So anytime you have a Northern Parliament or a British ship in the fleet, she gets 5% for each one and that stacks 3 times. So she can get basically 15% firepower. All you got to do is put like 2 British ships in or a British and a Russian. Easy peasy. If there are at least 3 Northern Parliament or HMS ships in the fleet, then you are also going to get 15% anti-air and minus 10% ignite damage taken. I mean, ignite damage is not going to be a super big thing. I guess there are some world maps like, 11 or whatever where like fire damage can matter. Yeah, so this ship is actually like half decent for a elite battleship. I mean, I'm not going to go out and be like, she's amazing and you should get her and you're going to use her. I'm probably not going to ever use her because I have a pretty full dock, but this is actually a pretty cheap battleship that can buff your backline for hit stat, which is kind of good. And then also like a really simple way to buff her up with, some synergy that is historically relevant. I like this ship. I like the way they designed it. I probably won't be using it, but I'm obviously going to pick it up for fleet tech. All right, last but not least, I mean, she's an elite destroyer, so maybe least, is, oh gosh, this is going to kill me. Soobrazitelny. Oh my gosh. All right, so she's an elite destroyer, and she also is kind of looking like she might be firepower based. She's got less health, less firepower, and I think even less evasion and torp stat than Kiev earlier. So we're basically working on a lower level Kiev. She's also got less efficiencies and everything. So basically, just take whatever Kiev was and downgrade everything except maybe anti-air. No, not even. I mean, she's getting more anti-air efficiency but less anti-air stat. She's basically just a straight downgrade on Kiev in terms of stats, and that's not saying much because Kiev wasn't like especially great in that regard. So hopefully she has some fun skill. Skill number 1, every 15 seconds, there's a 30% chance to deploy the standard smoke screen, which is like the 40% evasion rate for 5 seconds. That doesn't stack with other ones. So we get a standard smoke screen. While she's under that smoke screen though, she gets to deal 12% more damage. That's just a straight like increase, and she gets 8% more luck. For the rest of the battle, those do not stack though, so you can't just like get more luck by getting in more smoke screens. In theory, how I read this is it doesn't have to be her smoke screen though. So if you go into like a full smoke screen fleet, which honestly with all the smoke screens they've been putting out recently makes me want to do that, but in theory, if you have like a full smoke screen fleet, like the latest Chinese ships had smoke screens that were really good, you could get more damage, and the luck can, you get extra luck, but it doesn't stack, so you can't really like abuse this too much. All right, so we get a smoke screen, and it's a little bit better than normal. Skill number 2, every 20 seconds, 70% chance to fire a barrage. If there are other Northern Parliament DDs in the fleet when the barrage triggers, heal a random Northern DD for 5% max HP. If that ship is Tashkent, heal effect is increased by 50%, max 2 heal triggers per battle. So at the 20-second mark and the 40-second mark, you can do this. Obviously, well, I guess because it's only a 70% chance to fire this barrage, then there is a chance that like one of those 2 misses, and then you have to wait for the 60-second mark. So that's not great, but it is a heal. 5% heal for max HP of the ship that it's healing. So a little bit different, which is actually fine because she has like less than 2,500 HP. Obviously, this is meant to heal Tashkent. This kind of reminds me of Vestal and Enterprise, where they're like, here's a heal, but if you use it with Enterprise, or you use it with this specific ship, Tashkent's good though. I just don't really see like running this with Tashkent though. Like, Tashkent's fine. I like Tashkent. She's got a lot of utility. Obviously, she's been power crept a little bit by some of the newer destroyers, but she's still a good destroyer. But I don't really see a need to put this in here. I mean, so it's really just a heal for Tashkent. She's like a heal partner. It kind of reminds me of like Shigure and Yukikaze, where it's like Yukikaze is just fine by herself, and you can put Shigure with her and it makes her a little bit better, but like not that many people do that, but it's like an option. This is probably the most collection tier of any of the ships here. It's basically if you're like a Tashkent simp and you just want to have something special and unique for that, that's really all I see here in this ship. Collection tier only, really. So overall, I'm going to do a brief rundown of the ships, and then we're going to talk about the new equipment, and then that will be it for this video. It's already going long enough. So Kronk is actually pretty good. She reminds me very much of Azuma, which is fine. It's not better than a gear. However, it has a cross-fleet buff that is unmatched and unparalleled probably anywhere for a long time. This cross-fleet buff is probably going to stand as unique and like not going to be matched for a very, very long time. So that makes it a must pull for me, just that cross-fleet barrage. But outside of that, she really just reminds me similar of a little bit more powerful Azuma. It kind of feels like a mix of Azuma with some of the new features of a gear, like the ghost gun. That's really powerful. But yeah, she's good. Like, straight good, but if you got a gear, you might be using her instead, or ideally you're using both in separate fleets, and then you can use like a gear for the boss and you can use Kronk for the mob or something like that, and then you get double slows, like slows on the torpedoes, slows on the barrages. Oh, that would be great. All right, moving on to Kiev. She's like all right. She's kind of focused on being a 1-1 fleet with another Russian mommy in the back, and that's fine. 1-1 fleets are less important, but if you were looking to run like a 1-1 fleet in the Russian faction, she's like decent for that. Russians had plenty of good 1-1 fleets though before this, so not super important, and oil caps kind of made 1-1 fleets less important to have, but she is definitely cute though, so and she's going to be easy to pick up, so might as well pick her up, get the fleet tech, and maybe she'll have some utility later. Volga is actually a pretty decent carrier, nothing like preloaded and nothing like super powerful, but she's definitely on par with most other SR carriers that are like, in this modern realm, so that's good. And she's got a really good heal. The heal obviously is at the 20-second mark, so a little bit slow, similar to some of the older healers, but it is definitely, nonetheless, if you take out Perseus, who's not been rerun yet still, I would say this is definitely definitely one of the best healers we got. So she's probably the second target after Kronk. And then we have the elite battleship, which is good enough. You can use it if you're a new player, certainly. Like, definitely got some utility, especially with the triple auxiliary gun mounts and the barrages that come really early, and also just like ignite damage taken reduction. Like, this is like a pretty good new ship for new players that are looking to get into like World 9 to World 11 and haven't completed that yet. That's where really the difficulty ramps up in the world map. And so this is actually kind of like an easy on-ramp to fixing those problems. I really like this ship as an elite because obviously not every ship can be the best and fantastic. So you got to give like newer players something that, you know, has some utility specifically for what they're working on. So I really like this design mechanically for this ship. So that's great. And then we got the Elite Destroyer, who is basically just collection only for Tashkent Simps. So that's basically the 5 ships. I like this event a lot, but we're not done yet because we have the equipment still to do. So that can make a difference. I'm assuming Kronk is going to get a gun based on the way that they wrote her skills. All right, so we get the secret document log remnants, and this is going to give, you know, torpedo and HP. That's interesting. This is your standard like 6% less damage taken from sirens. It doesn't stack. That's like, okay. It's just different stats. It's interesting they gave the torp stat one to the Russian faction. All right, I mean, I would pick it up just in case you need it, but not super important. I guess if you don't have one of these 6% damage reductions from sirens, that's important to have going into Operation Siren. So if you're newer, definitely this is more important. But if you have all the other secret documents, this is less important, but might as well pick it up. It should be easy. There's nothing really you have to do. But what we're all here for is the new Russian B-50, you know, triple 305 millimeter MK-15 gun. This is a large cruiser gun. This is basically going to be Kronk's gun, and let's take a look at it. And so looking right off the bat in terms of raw damage, it's actually going to be better than what a Gear's like research gun is. So 108 times 3 shells, that's really good. That's a great start. It's got AP ammo, which is not AP plus, so it's going to do very similar damage modifiers to the Gear large cruiser gun, though. It's going to be a little bit better against heavy armor, a little bit worse against light armor, but overall these modifiers are 70%, 115%, and 80% for light, medium, heavy respectively, and that's very, very respectable. It's obviously a gold gun, so 45 firepower boost. Its rate of fire is a little bit slower than that a Gear gun, so because of that, I'm not sure. I think the damage per second, it's going to be really close in terms of the DPS. So it's going to be whether or not you want your shells to hit harder or be a little bit faster. The coefficients are identical. I assume the plus 13 coefficient will be identical too because the plus 10 coefficient is identical. So honestly, this gun looks like a very similar to the research a Gear large cruiser gun. Like very little is different. Like a little bit more damage, a little bit slower fire rate, more effective against heavy armor slightly, little less effective against light armor, a little bit more for heavy, and identical for medium. The area of effect and spread, I mean, it's really hard to see how those are going to affect before we get into game in terms of how they fire pattern, but my guess is this is just straight a replacement if you don't have the research gun. Of course, it is in the Russian faction, so that's nice for whenever you need those to meet requirements. I would definitely pick this up because it comes in the shop, but overall, this is not like groundbreaking in terms of damage, but it is good, right? I would pick this up, definitely. It reminds me a lot of Chappie gun versus Seattle gun. It's like very similar. If you're new, like pick up this because you know, it can replace you being a little bit behind on research. And if you're old and you got a bunch of them, you literally can just pick between the two. So nothing like groundbreaking, but definitely something to keep in mind that you should use, and probably just going to use it on Kronk because that's pretty easy. And yes, I have delegated the nickname to Kronstadt to Kronk because that's just easier for me to say. And I think it's funny because memes. Anyway, so that makes up all the new ships and the equipment. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a like. And if you want to make sure that you get all the data mines in the future, make sure to subscribe. Thank you guys, and take care. Have fun today. I'll probably be streaming this weekend the new event. Maybe I'll do polls here. I'm not sure, but definitely if you're not on my Discord server, join that and you'll get notified of what I'm going to be doing for this event. Good luck on all your polls. Take care, and until next time.